Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that subscribe button. Really does help our channel grow, our audience grow, and I really do appreciate it more than you know. So click that subscribe button. Appreciate your support. Now, here's the video that you came here for. Want to go ahead and get to a little bit of an interesting college football topic that I saw come across my news feed on late Sunday. I don't think it's one that we need 20 minutes of Torres going ballistic for, but it was an interesting topic. A lot of you did ask me about it. And frankly, it did involve two programs that we have discussed quite a bit here on the Aaron Torres Pod and Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel, Alabama and its new head coach, Kalen Deboer, and the school that felt the trickle-down effects of him leaving for Alabama. That is the Arizona Wildcats, who, of course, lost their head coach, Jedd Fisch, to Washington when Deboer left for Tuscaloosa. So let's go ahead and dive in. I'm just going to lay it out for you how I saw it, what went down, whatever. But basically, it was Sunday night. I was actually hosting Fox Sports Radio right here. And I kind of see this story pop up on my social media feed, and Alabama fans are mad. I'm trying to figure out what's going on. But Kalen Deboer was accused of tampering with star Arizona quarterback Noah Fifita. Noah Fifita, by the way, is an unbelievable college football player. Replaced Jayden de Laura because of injury at the middle of the season, and basically Wally pipped his way to that job. He took the job and never gave it back. 7 straight wins to end the season in Arizona, 74% completion percentage, 26 touchdowns. He is a rising star in college football. And so obviously when Jedd Fisch left, there was a lot of speculation. Is he going to stay? Is he going to go? Is he going to follow Fisch? Is he going to go somewhere else? So the question becomes, what happened? How did it go down? Whatever. But before we even get into it, let me say this. I saw Alabama fans fired up. And when I actually looked into the details of this, Alabama fans, you're right. You have every reason to be mad because this is one of the dumbest stories I've ever seen, but we got to discuss it because a lot of you have asked me about it. So the topic again is that Noah Fifita, star quarterback of Arizona, there was a report that came out late on Sunday that new head coach at Alabama, Kalen Deboer, was accused of tampering with him. Here is what happened. Here is how it went down. It came from a Twitter account called Blue Bloods Bias. Okay. Now, Blue Bloods Bias tweeted out at what? 5:04 Eastern time, 5:40 Eastern time, on Sunday evening. Breaking. Alabama and head coach Kalen Deboer are being accused of tampering with Arizona star quarterback Noah Fifita. Fifita led Arizona to 10 wins last year and is considered one of the top quarterbacks in the sport. His dad has now revealed that Alabama has reached out to them despite Noah never entering the portal. And so listen, when I first saw this, a couple things stood out. One, I was like, it's kind of an interesting story. And two, what I will say, I am somebody that, listen, we can like the rules, we can not like the rules, we can argue, we can debate. But if Alabama did something wrong, we got to hold them accountable for it. So what ends up happening? I go ahead and look to see where this breaking report came from. I went to all the sources. I went to ESPN.com. I went to Pete Thamel's Twitter page. I went to Ross Dellinger's Twitter page. Nothing. So that was when I got suspicious, okay? But beyond that, this is where it actually came from. It came from a loose quote in an interview with The Athletic where Noah Fifita's dad was asked about, hey, basically like, was the decision to return to Arizona tough? And The Athletic doesn't really specify like what the question was that led to this answer. But here was the quote that Blue Bloods Bias decided was enough for them to run with. Breaking, Kalen Deboer accused of tampering. Here's what Noah Fifita's dad said. He said, we had 3 for sure. The insinuation being 3 programs they were interested in when Jedd Fisch left for Washington. Alabama is the only one we were really interested in outside of Arizona and staying, and obviously Washington. The boys were like, I don't know if we could go to Washington. And so the question becomes, so first of all, what does that quote even mean? So that quote basically, first of all, when Noah Fifita's dad talks about the boys, what that means is that Noah Fifita was a star quarterback at Servite High School in Anaheim, California. He and several of his teammates went to Arizona out of high school. So when the dad says Noah and the boys, were thinking about different options. What he's talking about is him and his high school buddies, including, by the way, Tetairoa McMillan, an All-American, probably a first-round pick next year, like 90-plus receptions this year. But basically what Les Fifita loosely said in that interview, and he didn't even say, but we'll get into it. Torres, I need to calm myself down. I'm so fired up. But what he basically said was, look, when Jedd Fisch left, Noah and the boys thought about 3 different options. Staying at Arizona. We briefly thought about Washington, but we couldn't go to Washington because the bridges were burned with Jedd Fisch. And we were interested in Alabama. And the reason of Alabama was because there were ties to Kalen Deboer from his time when Kalen Deboer interviewed or when he recruited Noah Fifita out of high school. At the time, Kalen Deboer was at Fresno, was interested in Noah Fifita. Noah Fifita goes to Arizona. Kalen Deboer goes to Washington, then leaves to Alabama. But that was the entire article. That was the entire thing that became an internet thing on Sunday night. There was no credible reports. There was no credible nothing. There was just one loose quote where Noah Fifita's dad said that there were 3 schools that they were kind of sort of interested in: Alabama, Arizona, and to a degree, Washington. Now, it is worth noting, Les Fifita, Noah Fifita's dad, did put out a statement on Twitter, and he was not happy. He goes, absolutely fake, blatant lies, just the world we live in, I guess. Never have I spoken to Coach Deboer or anyone from his camp. Crazy these dudes hound you to talk and then spit out crap for likes and views. By the way, he used the crap emoji, which I'm a big fan of. And then he continued, just literally had this talk with my high school kids about doing things for the right reasons and not just likes. Damn, maybe it's not the kids. Maybe it's the adults. Bet you next thing these dudes will be jumping in my DMs. Well, so far, no update on if they've jumped in the DMs. But let me say this. I actually very much sympathize with Noah Fifita, his dad, Alabama, Kalen Deboer. And I'll just be blunt. I think, honestly, the only person or people in the wrong here is the Twitter account that put it out. Now, Blue Bloods bias, I don't know much about them. I might have said this earlier. They do follow me, so they must be all right. But what I'll say is a couple things. One, this is one of these social media accounts that has no name, no face, no credibility, no sources. All they do is pull quotes and aggregate and interviews and this and that. And they try to take the most salacious things and turn them into something. It literally, literally the exact tweet has a picture of Kalen Deboer with the headline tampering, which is in and of itself. But first of all, these social media accounts drive me crazy. Okay. I actually got into it with one of the NFL accounts over the summer because they completely misquoted Joe Montana for engagement and interaction. And I said, look, it makes it hard for anyone in the media to get interviews because nobody, as Les Fifita said, wants to do interviews because you're misquoting them and you're putting stuff out there that isn't true. Les Fifita never said that. We're going to get to that in a minute. But one, think about the source. Nonsense source, okay? That's one. Two, by the way, if you actually do some digging, and I have, this Blue Bloods bias account, I think, must have a bias with Arizona football. And to be clear, I am not an Arizona fan. Never went to Arizona. Been to Tucson once for a basketball game. It was amazing. But they have been going after Fifita and Tetairoa McMillan all offseason, okay? November 29th. You can look it up. They basically insinuated that Tetairoa McMillan, the star wide receiver, would be entering the transfer portal and that he would be a hot commodity. You know what? I'll tell you what. Since they're putting out nonsense without attribution, let me at least directly quote them so people know. This is what Blue Bloods Bias put out on November 29th after Arizona's 10-win season. It said a name to watch out for in the transfer portal heats up is Arizona star wide receiver Tetairoa McMillan. McMillan finished with 1,200 yards, more than even Marvin Harrison Jr. He helped Arizona to 9-3 record and arguably the best returning wide receiver in college football. That was put out on November 29th at 1:15 p.m. I remember that because I got fired up. I was mad about that because in my opinion, I think it's totally unfair for any social media account, any media member, anybody, anywhere to insinuate what players may enter the transfer portal. Now, once they enter the portal, It's fair game. Talk about whatever you want. When Caleb Downs entered the portal, we talked about it on this channel. We talked about, is it going to be Georgia? Is it going to be Ohio State? Is it going to be somebody else? Whatever. But I don't like the idea of social media accounts deciding that, hey, this guy is a high-profile player. He goes to a school that I don't consider to be a power, so he's going to leave after this year. So one, they insinuated that Arizona's star players were going to enter the portal. And then they took it to another level after Jedd Fisch left, because on January 18th, they put out a tweet. This is unbelievable, by the way. The same account, Blue Bloods Biased. You can look it up. They put out on January 18th a list of the top quarterbacks returning to college football next year. And it had all the usual names: Quinn Ewers to Texas, Jalen Milroe, Alabama. It also had Noah Fafita, the star quarterback of Washington. So the same account that is accusing Kalen Deboer of tampering with Noah Fafita, even though he never entered the portal, also about 3 weeks ago, just went ahead and put Noah Fafita on Washington's roster, assuming that he was going to follow his former head coach to Washington. So this account has some weird obsession with either Arizona football, the Fafita family. I don't know if the Fafita family crossed somebody the wrong way, but it is so weird. It is so bizarre. But even from the Alabama perspective, listen, Kalen Deboer's got bigger fish to fry. I'd be pissed if I was him. And here's why. Let's just look at a couple different factors from the Alabama perspective. One, let's reread the quote from Les Fafita, because I think this is important. I'm all over the place right now. I'm fired up. It's a Monday. There's not a lot going on. I just want to talk about this. The exact quote from Les Fafita in The Athletic. He said, "We had three for sure. Alabama is the only one we were interested in outside of Arizona and staying, and obviously Washington. The boys were like, I don't know if we could go to Washington." Why do I bring it up? It is because never once did Les Fafita, Noah Fafita's dad, say the following things. Never said Kalen Deboer reached out. Never said Alabama reached out. Never even said that they would, whatever. Never said Kalen Deboer would reached out. Never said Alabama reached out. All it said was there were schools that were, the schools that we would have been interested in were Alabama. For a second, we thought about Washington and decided against it, and Arizona. Never says that Kalen Deboer reached out. Never says it. That was what the whole headline, that's what the whole tweet was about. And I'm sorry, Alabama fans. I know I said I wasn't going to yell and scream, but now I'm fired up because it drives me crazy, because I am in the media. I do have a face. This thing right here, it's not AI. It's real. And I do go to games, and I do know parents and players and SIDs. And I do ask for interviews. And when I do, it's harder to get them because these fake Twitter accounts make stuff up. Nowhere in that quote does it say that Kalen Deboer reached out. By the way, nowhere does it say that a scholarship was offered, that they wanted to visit. Nowhere does it say that, and it drives me crazy. It drives me because you're just making stuff up. You're taking a quote and insinuating something. By the way, I'd also say this. Even if Kalen Deboer liked Noah Fafita, I don't know that it made a ton of sense for any party or for either side to be interested in each other. Alabama returns a quarterback who just won the SEC. His name's Jalen Milroe. He was really freaking good. I know Alabama fans, some will say he's the answer. Some will say he's not the answer. Some will say this, some will say that. But he just won the SEC. You think Noah Fafita, who had to fight to get that starting job at Arizona, that he's now going to transfer somewhere where they have an incumbent starting quarterback? Doesn't even make sense. Go to Washington. You know Michael Penix is gone. You have a pathway to starting there, but to go to Alabama to fight for the starting quarterback job doesn't make sense. Oh, by the way, Kalen Deboer brought Austin Mack, his high-profile quarterback recruit at Washington, with him. So you now are competing with two guys that are probably good enough to start. One who has history with the coach. Doesn't even make sense. And oh, by the way, nowhere in the quote did the dad say anything about Kalen Deboer offering, interviewing, talking. All it says were, we were sort of interested. Finally, let me say this. Let's work under the assumption. which I don't believe, but let's work under the assumption. Let's say Kalen Deboer did reach out. It ain't that big of a deal. I don't really care. And you know who else doesn't care about tampering in college sports right now under the current rules? Now, maybe they'll change because the SEC and the Big Ten have this alliance, and I think they're going to rewrite the college football rule book going forward. We talked about that on Monday's show. You can find the clip here on YouTube. But at the same time, even if they did tamper, which we have no real proof that they did besides a breaking tweet from Blue Blood Bias. Sorry, I'm all fired up right now. I said I wasn't going to get fired up, but I did. Outside of that, we have nothing. But here's the thing. Even if he did tamper, the tampering rules are so lame. Who cares? One, everybody does it. But two, the NCAA isn't even interested in enforcing it. You know how I know? It's because if you remember a few weeks ago, Caden Proctor, former Alabama offensive tackle, decides to enter the portal. And he commits to his home state school, Iowa. I don't really care. Good. If that's where you want to go, if you want to be close to your family, your friends, your parents, you're this, you're that, that's your prerogative. Committed to Iowa out of high school. He tried Alabama. It wasn't for him. There were reports that even if Nick Saban had come back, he would not be returning. And so I only bring it up to say this, is that in an interview after he committed to Alabama, you know what he said? Alabama fans, you know exactly what he said. He said, loosely, I can't find the direct quote right now, but he basically said, like, look, the Iowa coaching staff reached out to me during the season to wish me luck, blah, 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 this and that. Basically, the insinuation was he was tampered with by the Iowa coaching staff, okay? But why I bring it up, Iowa actually self-reported a violation. Iowa basically said, we may have actually tampered with him. But here is the quote from the Iowa AD about the whole situation. Her name is Beth Gotts. She just started. It said, based on similar cases that the NCAA has seen, Gotts anticipates the enforcement to be the extent of, quote, make sure you're educated and don't do it again. She continued, it doesn't lessen the fact that we need to be responsible for what the rules are. Anytime we make a mistake, we're going to hold ourselves accountable and take appropriate actions to ensure we don't find ourselves in the same position again. But why do I bring it up? It's because she basically said the NCAA doesn't care. She said she anticipates the enforcement will be the extent of make sure you're educated and don't do it again. So even if he tampered, it's not that big of a deal, Blue Blood's bias. So anyway, I'm all fired up over essentially nothing. I don't know why I'm so worked up. Maybe it's a Monday. Maybe there's not a lot going on in the news. Maybe I need to take a deep breath and not get so fired up. But just when these accounts just make stuff up, it just drives me bananas. Anyway, Kalen Deboer, you did nothing wrong, brother. Keep fighting the fight. No Fafita. Go throw a bunch of touchdown passes for Arizona next year. What a weird story. But we had to talk about it. By the way, if you're not subscribed, make sure to do so. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. New episodes of the Aaron Torres pod every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. We'll be back soon.